It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
Welcome into another edition of Musso at the box, off and running here. Fired up to have you with me today. Fired up for today's show. This is going to be a really fun conversation. What we're going to do today, we're going to talk about two key returners for LSU that are going to play a huge role and make massive impacts in 2025, but it might not necessarily be in the way that you're thinking. I'll explain what I mean as we go forward. And then also a LSU newcomer gets a massive preseason honor. We'll tell you about that a little bit later in the show as well. So again, welcome in. Glad to have you with me. Smash the like, subscribe if you haven't already, both to the YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast app. Take me with you wherever you go. Just, of course, search Musso at the box, and it should be right there. Share, all of that, greatly appreciated. Follow me on social media as well. Those scroll on the bottom of your screen. And let's just go ahead and dive right into it. I told you we're going to talk about two key returners. One offensively and in the field, and one on the mound. And yes, the one on the mound is Chase Shores. And I know that should excite a lot of people. That is obviously a big hot button issue here, not issue, hot button topic, we'll call it, here in the 2025 offseason leading into the 2025 regular season is the return of Chase Shores. Little background on Chase Shores in case you may have forgotten. Now into his third season of college baseball, redshirt sophomore, of course, coming off Tommy John from the 2023 season, missed all of 2024, but was out of Midland, Texas as a recruit, was the number one ranked right-handed pitcher in the entire state of Texas. He's a giant, 6'8", 252, and throws the ball really hard, about 98 miles an hour to 100 miles per hour. He is everything that you want when you recruit a guy out of high school. With that frame, that size, that ability already coming in, it's like, yeah, that's a guy who can compete for a spot immediately and contribute for you immediately. And that's how it was going for Chase Shores in 2023. Let's take you back there so we can understand where we are here today, because that's part of this. Again, as I just said, you look at those measurables, you look at everything, how badly the draft wanted him, and you won that battle, and you get him to campus, and he immediately starts making an impact, not only in the fall, but in the spring, and then in the regular season. You will remember, if you were listening to the show heading into that 2023 season, we talked an awful lot about Chase Shores because he was one of those guys, and there's one every single year. Sometimes there's multiple. Every single year when you get to this point in the calendar, when you're, what are we, 15 days? 15 days away from first pitch, there are certain guys who start to separate themselves, and by the end of things, you go, okay, you cannot keep that guy off the field. He's going to play. Chase Shores was one of those guys in 2023. Near the end of that preseason camp, he was regularly starting that Sunday scrimmage. You get into the regular season, and lo and behold, he gets the Sunday start against VMI in game number 3 to open up that season. And he pitched really, really well in that outing, did Chase Shores. Just to take you back to it, Western Michigan. I had my seasons crossed. Western Michigan. VMI was a season ago. Western Michigan was in 2023, but he pitched into the 4th inning, only gave up 1 earned run. He was really good, and he got 3 more starts subsequent of that. His first 4 appearances were starts. In 2 of them, he pitched into the 4th inning. They never really extended him, but through the pre-conference, the only run that he allowed was that one against Western Michigan. And at that point, you're like, okay, this guy's carving up lineups. He's sitting 98 to 100. Do you want a little bit more from the secondary stuff? Sure. But he's a freshman. You kind of expect that. You know that's going to take time to development. But one thing that was for sure is that guy's going to contribute for you in the SEC. And boy, did he. First opening weekend, he gets into the Texas A&M game on Sunday, throws you 3 innings in that ball game. Follows that up against Arkansas, and you might remember this game. That was the Friday night game that got moved to Friday afternoon. It was a top 5 matchup, maybe even top 3 matchup. Actually, at the time, LSU was number 1. I know that. Heading into there, Hagen Smith, it wasn't Hagen Smith. He ended up coming out of the bullpen. It was Paul Skeens and oh God, what was that kid? Hunter something, from Arkansas. He was really good. That big pitching matchup, all of that. And you get to the ninth inning and it's tied. Skeens got you through 8. You get to the ninth inning and it's tied. They go to Chase Shores first out of the bullpen. He throws a shutout ninth, gets LSU a chance to win it in the bottom half. They don't, goes into extra. Unfortunately, he would give up 1 run in extra innings. They'd pull him, and then the game got completely out of hand from that point, and LSU would lose. But you saw him step up in a very big moment there. And it's like, okay, freshman starting to find what he had in the pre-conference again now against the top 5 team. Fast forward to the next weekend, he comes in to face Tennessee in another high-pressure spot. This was game 2. LSU's clinging to a 2-run lead. Shores gives you a shutout 6th and a shutout 7th. And in that shutout 7th, the injury happened. That was March 31st, 2023. That's significant. We're going to come back to that. And at that moment, it was crap. Because you saw what he was going to be. And you saw him being a major contributor on that team. And ultimately, that team ended up fine. They won the national championship. But the residual of that was what happened a year ago, where you didn't have Chase Shores. And that hurt your staff immensely. Now you have him back. And I don't think you can really overstate the importance of having Chase Shores back. Jay Johnson, when he met with the media on that Friday to open up preseason practice, talked about the importance of having Chase Shores back.
Excited to have him back. The 23-year, I just mentioned, you promise adversity. There wasn't a ton of adversity in that. Him going down, was a thunderbolt there, but it really impacted last year. It really impacted last year, especially when you look at, say, everything plays out the same. You have Luke Holman, Gage Jump, and Chase Shores. It's a different deal. And so his arm looks great. He's really throwing strikes. Really like where the mindset's at.
I confirm that the arm looks good. Saw Chase Shores pitch in the fall once, but it was his first outing in the fall, which means it was pretty much his first time on a mound in that controlled game-like environment since March 31st against Tennessee. And when I saw him pitch, he threw 2 shutout innings, punched out 2. The fastball is back up to 98, and you saw development in the secondary stuff. The slider looked pretty good. He didn't have a great total feel for it, and that, again, is to be expected. It is a long layoff for him pitching. So that will continue to come along. But you could see further progress in that pitch. Again, 2 shutout and 2 punch-outs in those 2 innings. He looked really good. You heard Jay Johnson likes where he's at. All of that is so encouraging. But what does it mean for LSU in 2025? And that's where the conversation goes now. Because we can know all of that and understand all of that and get really fired up that Chase Shores looks good, that he's healthy, that he's back up to 98. Man, you've got the guy back. Your prized arm, he's back. You're ready to go. We can be all fired up about that. What I want you to do, let's just put that in a box, tape it up, wrap it, put a bow on it, and put it in the corner. And kind of forget about that for a moment and talk about what this means for 2025. Because it's not, to me, as so cut and dry that Chase Shores is going to go out there immediately Friday and just be guns a-blazing, the ace that you expect him to be, and it's going to be nothing but happiness, rainbows, and success all the way to June and through the College World Series. Baseball doesn't work like that. And the reason I'm taking it this direction is because Chase Shores will make an impact for LSU in 2025. He has to. For LSU to get where they want to go, which is winning the last game of the season in Omaha, Chase Shores is going to have to pitch in your biggest games, and he's going to have to be successful in those moments. And I believe that he will be. I just think it might take some time. And here's why I say that. You just saw this a year ago. All of us did. We collectively watched it with Gage Jump. Gage Jump, if you don't remember the story, as a freshman at UCLA in 2022, kind of burst onto the scene, had, I think, 4 starts or so, pitched some in relief, 7 appearances, blew out in April of 22. So it was later in the year. He missed all of 2023, entered the transfer portal, and showed up at LSU. And when he showed up, he was that guy, that prized recruit out of the portal, a lefty, profiles as a starter, 4-pitch mix, can sit mid-90s. When he really needs to rear back and reach back, he can grab 97, 98 from the left side. So projectable. It's what you want. That's going to be your Friday night guy immediately. The caveat with that was, while this was Gage Jump's third year in college, he had thrown 16 1/3 innings in his entire career because of the injury. And it was a very effective 16 1/3. How could it not be when you have that type of stuff? But look at Chase Shores. Chase Shores has all this ability in the world. He's got the measurables. He's got it all. He's in his third year of college. He's thrown 18 1/3 innings. Very, very similar to Gage Jump. Now, it was a very effective 18 1/3 innings because how could it not be when you have that type of stuff? Sub-2 ERA as a freshman in the SEC. Like, yeah. But it's 18 1/3 innings. There's going to be rust. I remember back to the media availability to open preseason practice in 2024, Gage Jump was one of the select players that spoke, and he was asked about his recovery, and he spoke very in detail about it. And I thought about pulling the clip, but I didn't need to. The one thing that was actually the most important that relates to the conversation we're having now is Jump mentioned in his recovery 18 months. 18 months is your target, where at that point you have no more restrictions from Tommy John, and that he was at that point and he was ready to go. Chase Shores is at that point. The injury happened on March 31st of 2023. Figured he surged there in April. We sit here now, January 30th. He's there. Like he should be good to go. And if you liken this back to Jump, you saw him come in that opener against VMI out of the pen, throw the shutout inning, wow everybody with the fastball. The very next week, he's starting. And that was really his role going forth. And LSU kept ramping him up. And he was awesome in the pre-conference. But when he got into conference play, into the SEC, the rust started to show a little bit. Because this was a guy who at that point still didn't have 50 innings in his college career. And now he's going up against SEC hitting, excuse me. And you have to adapt to that. Especially after a long layoff. And ultimately, he did. The Florida game really stood out as the time where you first saw it against a conference foe. And then really in that Missouri game, the switch flipped. And the only time down the stretch he didn't give you at least 6 innings was when he came in relief in the regional final. Every other time, he was locked in, 6 innings, was dominant. And that's when LSU was able to really have their 1-2 punch. And you built it the rest of the way, made the run down the stretch, got in, and were a few outs away from playing home super regional baseball. I think you could see something very similar with Chase Shores because of the rust factor. I'm not telling you Chase Shores isn't going to be your Friday night guy from day one. He very well may be. He might not be. Cade Anderson might get the run at that first. He's had a really, really impressive offseason. But at some point, is Chase Shores going to be that guy? Yeah, probably. And I think he could follow a very similar path to what you saw Gage Jump do a season ago, where he looks awesome in the pre-conference, but when you get into the conference opportunities and the conference starts, the rust starts to show because it's a guy who hasn't pitched in well over a year and had 18 1/3 innings coming in. It will happen. I'm just going to caution you to approach Chase Shores with patience. He will have a great year. He will be a massive impact player for LSU. And for them to get where they want to be, he has to be. And again, he will be. But patience. It might not just be like, holy cow, here he is again. But that doesn't mean he's not going to be your next ace. That's Chase Shores. Offensively and in the field, we're going to turn our focus to the outfield. And the outfield is I don't want to call it a jumbled mess, but it's a jumbled mess. And it's a jumbled mess because you have, as Jay Johnson put it when he spoke with the media, 8 different guys that could play and not have much of a drop-off. A lot of people say, oh, that's a great problem to have. I don't necessarily know if it is, especially in this day and age of college athletics, but guys want to play, and guys are going to be scratching, fighting, and clawing for that playing time. And the bigger issue for LSU is because there's not a lot of drop-off, you have an opportunity to get all those guys playing time. It's just finding your best combo and sticking with it, because it has to come together faster for LSU this season, right? That's what we've talked about plenty already since the show's been back, and we're going to talk about that plenty as we continue to go along, because that's ultimately what's most important. Can't dig a hole like you did last year. And the schedule doesn't really allow for that, or at least it shouldn't allow for that. It's still SEC baseball. But it has to come together faster. And when you look at the outfield and all those options, there is kind of this consensus that, man, Jake Brown's going to be out there either in center or at one of the corner spots. Chris Stanfield's going to be out there probably in center field, if not one of the corner spots. He's a veteran player in the SEC at Auburn. He's been really, really good. Great defender. Pretty solid at the plate. And then, oh, man, there's this freshman, Derek Curiel, who's just standout guy. You know, should have been drafted, pulled his name out, came to LSU, could be the next one, like the next phenom in Baton Rouge. That guy's going to play early for sure. And then you look and you're like, okay, well, wait, what about Josh Pearson? What about Ashton Larson? What about all those guys? And Ashton Larson is the one that I really want to focus in on. Because, again, if you were here last year, you know that I sat right here at this desk in this chair and beat the drum hard for Ashton Larson for a long time. Because Larson, when he arrived on campus, was a top 100 high school player in the country, had great size, great frame, great projectability, kind of like what we talked about with Cade Beatty a few days ago, where you saw him in the uniform for the first time, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that's what they look like. I've seen that guy come through LSU before, and you know what? It worked out pretty well for him. So you're enamored with all of that. And then he starts getting opportunity off the bench in pinch hit roles and whatnot, and he just keeps delivering time and time and time again throughout the pre-conference, to the point where he's hitting like 636 or something absurd. I don't remember quite what it was by the time you're into your last conference, non-conference, or pre-conference weekend. And at that point, LSU's outfield, much like it is this season, had a lot of options. And the ones you were trying to stick with, it wasn't working at that point. You needed some help. And we were like, man, hey, there's a guy who's a top 100 player hitting 600 on your bench. Let's give him a shot. They give Ashton Larson a shot in that opening game against Xavier. In fact, he got two different starts in that series. He ended up only having the one hit. So he kind of faded back into the background a little bit. But then that Sunday game against Mississippi State, he comes in, scores 2 runs, gets the start, gets a hit. Okay, you got drubbed in that game, but whatever. It's still kind of difficult for him to break into the lineup a little bit. Fast forward to the Arkansas series, game number 3, Larson gets the start. Early in that ball game, I think it was in the first inning. It was either in the first or the second. He hits a 2-run homer to give LSU an early 2-run lead. And then you didn't take him out of the lineup again. And it paid dividends. Because from that point forward, Ashton Larson as a freshman was your leading hitter in conference play for the majority of the year, and it was well over 300. He found his way to the middle of the lineup. He hit the ball. I mean, he caught damn near everything out in right field, and he forced his hand. You forced your hand. You weren't able to take him out. He had to grow up in a hurry, but he did. And then by the season's end, he had hit 298 and was a key fixture for you. And it's just odd to me. It shows you the talent level that LSU has, that guy's kind of just, I don't want to say being dismissed, but being dismissed in conversations about LSU's outfield. And then you look up Monday scrimmage, and Ashton Larson goes 3 for 3 with a double and an RBI. And it's just like, oh, wait, yeah, there he is. That guy can still play. He's going to get at bats because he has to get at bats. You can't just leave that guy on the bench. But what I'm saying is, do not be surprised if you look up midseason and Ashton Larson is a starter in LSU's outfield again, because this could very well play the same course that it did a year ago, where, okay, it's pinch hit here, pinch hit there. Dang, he keeps delivering. He keeps coming through. All right, put him back out there, and then he never leaves the lineup again. Maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe he has a sophomore slump. See that plenty of times in baseball. That Alex Bregman went through a sophomore slump at LSU, and he eventually broke out of it because he was number 2 pick in the draft eventually, and has been an all-star and, great MLB career. But that guy went through some. Maybe that happens. Sure, that's possible. And if it does, great. You have a lot of depth and a lot of options. That's where that does become a good problem. But I don't think people should just be dismissing Ashton Larson. And as I said, yeah, I sat here last year and beat the drum pretty hard for him. That's not going to stop now, especially after what happened once he finally got his opportunity. So just keep that in mind. I would tell you the same thing. I think for LSU to get where they want to go, you're going to have some big moments from Ashton Larson throughout this season. So keep an eye on 44. He'll be out there. And what's the old adage? If you can hit the baseball, they'll find a place for you anywhere on the field. So we'll see what happens there. Lastly, this came across the inbox early this morning, and it's a great honor for a new LSU newcomer. Freshman outfielder Derek Curiel has been named D1Baseball's 2025 SEC preseason Freshman of the Year. It's funny, we're going to talk about this now after we just talked about the outfield depth and shoehorning guys in and things of that nature. And one of the guys we mentioned was Curiel. It's like, oh, that guy's going to play. And he's absolutely going to play. And he has to play because he's this good. Preseason SEC Freshman of the Year from the most reputable outlet there is in college baseball, D1. It's not surprising that he gets this accolade. I mean, look, we're going to talk plenty Derek Curiel. We still have to do our meet the transfers and all of that. But this is a guy who's a 2-time member of Team USA. I mean, he was a top 10 high school player in the country by Perfect Game. Perfect Game also just ranked him the number 1 freshman in the nation on their top 75 freshman list for 2025. This is a guy that in the fall was just littered all over LSU's offensive stat sheets. He hit 388 in the fall. That was second on the team. Just keep in mind, that's his first taste of college baseball, right? 388. And we all think LSU has some really good arms. Led the team in on base percentage in the fall at 522, was second in doubles in the fall with 5. He was all over the place. So this honor, it makes a lot of sense. And he is going to play a lot because that just doesn't lie. While I think a guy like Larson could force his way into the lineup at some point, I do think Derek Curiel is going to be an opening day starting outfielder for this team because he's just got that it. He does. I mean, yeah, he looks like he's going to be the next phenom at LSU. Good frame, wiry right now, but you can put a little bit of weight on it. Great left-handed swing. Has shown a little bit of pop, but is definitely doubles and gap hitter, gap to gap. Love to see that. And just has a great understanding of hitting. This is a guy that you look at and go, yeah, that's a Jay Johnson type player. And D1Baseball thinks it too. Don't take my word for it. Joe Schmo, who does this podcast and sits in a studio on Government Street, yeah, it's a pretty reputable source there, naming him Freshman of the Year in the SEC. And there's some really, really good freshmen this season in the league, across the league. LSU actually has a couple of them. But Curiel gets that honor, and man, it's going to be exciting to watch him go forth this season as in his freshman. He is a draft eligible sophomore when that time comes in 2026. So that's down the road. That is down the road, but he's one to certainly be excited about, and that honor just further solidifies it. All right, that's going to wrap it up here for today. Be sure to share, subscribe, smash the like button if you have not already. Please Follow me on the social media. Gee, Moose, there you go. Sound like an old man. Follow me on social media. That's greatly appreciated. And be here next time for more on Musso at the Box.